There's a specific feeling I want to talk about today. Not debt, not bankruptcy, not losing everything. Just this quiet, persistent, low-level feeling that things could fall apart. That you're one bad month away from a problem. That the ground underneath you is solid, probably, but you haven't fully tested it. That you're doing okay, but okay feels fragile. I think a lot of people know this feeling, and I think most of them never say it out loud. Because saying it out loud requires admitting something uncomfortable. That the money you're making, the life you've built, the effort you put in every single day, none of it has actually produced the feeling of safety you were working toward. You thought more income would fix it. It didn't. You thought paying off a debt would fix it. It helped. For a week, maybe two. And then the feeling came back. I'm 38. I work from home. I'm the only income in my household. My wife, 3 kids. And for years, I carried this feeling like it was just background noise. Like it was the tax you pay for being the person who's responsible for other people. Normal. Just normal. Except I don't think it is normal. I think it's common. There's a difference. Common means a lot of people experience it. Normal means it's how things are supposed to be. And I've stopped believing it's how things are supposed to be. That's what I want to talk about today. And as always, nothing in this video is financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm a dad working from home who started paying attention to his own thinking about money. Take what's useful, leave what isn't. When I was younger, early 20s, before kids, before any of this, I had a clear picture in my head of what financial safety would look like. It had a number attached to it. I don't remember the exact number, but there was a specific income level I thought about, and the story I told myself was, once I'm earning that, I'll feel settled. I'll feel like things are handled. The background hum of financial worry will finally go quiet. I reached that number. The hum didn't go quiet. So I adjusted the number. Higher. A new target. New story. Once I'm earning that, then I'll feel it. I reached that too. Still the same hum. This is a pattern that I think is almost universal, and almost universally unexamined. We attach the feeling of financial safety to a number, a milestone, a moment in the future when things will finally be enough. And then we reach the moment, and the feeling isn't there. And instead of questioning the logic, instead of asking whether the feeling was ever going to arrive through that route, we just move the goalposts. Higher number, bigger milestone, more distant future, and the feeling stays exactly where it was. This isn't a willpower problem. It's not a discipline problem. It's not even really a money problem. It's a design problem. We're trying to solve a psychological question with a financial answer, and those two things don't actually line up the way we assume they do. Let me be specific about what the feeling actually is, because I don't think it's just about money, even though it shows up as money anxiety. At its core, underneath the numbers, underneath the calculations, I think the feeling is about control. Specifically, the fear of losing control over your own life. The fear that something outside your control, an unexpected expense, a slow month, a health problem, a job disappearing, could remove your ability to choose, your ability to provide, your ability to keep the people who depend on you actually okay. That fear doesn't care how much you earn. It cares about the gap between your income and your obligations. It cares about your runway, how long you could survive without income before things became genuinely serious. For most people, that runway is terrifyingly short. One study, and I'm not here to throw numbers at you, but this one stuck with me, found that a significant portion of people in developed countries couldn't absorb an unexpected expense without going into debt. A real expense, a meaningful one. And if that's your situation, the fear makes complete sense. It's not irrational. It's a completely reasonable response to actual vulnerability. The problem isn't the fear. The problem is treating the symptom, the anxiety, instead of the actual condition, the vulnerability. Okay, here's where it gets personal for me. And honestly, this is the part I find hardest to talk about. Not because it's shameful, I've worked through most of that, but because it requires admitting something about how much of my financial behavior has been shaped by other people's expectations rather than my own choices. The external pressure started early, not dramatically, not in any single moment I can point to and say, there, that's where it began. It was more like a long, slow accumulation of signals about what success looks like, about what you're supposed to have at certain ages, about what it means to be doing well, not internally, not by your own measure, but by the measure of people around you. Family, extended family. The casual comparisons that happen at gatherings where nobody is explicitly competing, but everyone is quietly taking stock. What kind of car someone's driving, what neighborhood they live in, whether they took a vacation, what the kids are doing, whether the house is bigger than last time. Nobody says these things out loud. That's the insidious part. It's all implicit. It's all in the questions people ask, the things they don't ask, the particular tone of a compliment that contains just enough qualification to remind you where you stand. And without realizing it, over years, over a lifetime, those signals shape what you think you need. Not what you actually need, what you think you need, because you've absorbed a definition of enough that belongs to other people. I'll tell you something I don't think I've said out loud before. There have been periods in my life where I spent money I shouldn't have spent. Not because I wanted the thing, and not because it made practical sense, but because I needed a certain kind of people to see that I was doing okay. Not rich, just okay. Just holding my own. And the terrible irony of that is that spending money to appear okay is one of the most reliable ways to actually not be okay. You're not building anything. You're performing something. And the performance has a cost, and the cost comes directly out of the runway, out of the buffer, out of the foundation that would actually make you feel safer. So you perform security while making yourself less secure. And the feeling you were trying to produce, the sense that things are handled, gets further away with every performance. Let me describe what that performance looked like practically. It was rarely one big purchase. It was 100 small ones. The slightly nicer version of something because someone might notice. The restaurant you can't quite afford because you don't want to be the one who suggests somewhere cheaper. The thing you replace before it's broken because the old version would look like you're struggling. None of these are dramatic decisions. None of them would raise a flag in a conversation. But they accumulate, quietly. Every month, a little more going out the door in the direction of appearance and away from the direction of foundation. And here's the thing that took me a long time to see clearly. The people whose opinions I was managing, they were doing the same thing. They were also spending to manage my opinion of them. We were all performing at each other, spending money we could have been building with, trying to appear to each other like we were fine. A room full of people pretending to be more financially comfortable than they are, for the benefit of other people who are pretending the same thing. That's a strange way to spend a life. But it's exactly what happens when you let external definitions of success run your financial decisions. There's a specific form of this that I think hits men who are sole providers especially hard. The provider identity. If you're the only income for your family, and I am completely, there's a version of that role that comes with a particular set of invisible expectations. You're supposed to have it handled, not perfectly, but clearly, visibly, in ways that other people, your family, extended family, anyone who's paying attention, can confirm. If you're struggling, that's private. That's something you absorb. Because showing the struggle feels like failing the role. And so you maintain the appearance of having it handled. Even when you don't. Even when there are months where you're running the numbers at 2 a.m. and the numbers are uncomfortably close. Even when you're tired in a way that's deeper than physical tired. The appearance stays up. because that's what you've been taught, implicitly, slowly, over years, that the role requires. I'm not blaming anyone for this. My family loves me. The people around me aren't trying to create pressure. They're not malicious. But culture is culture, and the culture that most of us grew up in, the culture around men, money, and what it means to be the person responsible for others, that culture does not reward honesty about struggle. It rewards the appearance of capability, and you can carry that appearance for a long time, but it has a cost, and the cost accumulates. And at some point, usually quietly, usually without a dramatic moment, something has to change. For me, the change started with a question, a simple, uncomfortable question that I started asking myself about 3 years ago. What am I actually building this for? Let me tell you what a typical day feels like. Not to complain, not for sympathy, just because I think honesty about the texture of things is the only way any of this is useful. I work from home. I have 3 kids, 12, 9, and 3 years old. My wife is there. The house is full in the way that a house with 3 children is full. Loud in some hours, chaotic in others, needing something almost constantly. And I work through that. Because I have to. Because the income that comes from the work is the income that pays for everything. The food, the school, the utilities, the 100 small things that make a household run. There is no backup plan in the sense of another income. There's no cushion in the sense of a partner's salary that covers things if mine dips. It's just mine, all of it. Now, I'm not saying this as a complaint about my situation. I chose this. My wife and I built this life together, and we both made choices that led here. The choices made sense at the time, and most of them still make sense now. But there's a reality to being the single financial support for 5 people that I don't think gets talked about honestly enough. It's heavy. Not dramatically heavy. Not in a way you can point to any single day and say, today was unbearable. It's heavier than that. It's a background weight that doesn't lift. Ever. Not on weekends, not on holidays. Not on the days when the work is going well and the kids are happy and everything looks fine from the outside. The weight is always there, because the math is always there. 5 people, this month's bills, next month's bills, the school expenses, the car, the irregular costs that appear without warning, the future costs, education, health, all the things that are coming whether I'm ready for them or not. My brain runs that math constantly, not consciously, not always, but it's always running in the background. And that math, that constant, low-level calculation, is part of why the feeling of financial safety never fully arrives, because the calculation never fully resolves. There's always a next month, always a next year, always a cost that's coming that hasn't arrived yet. I want to say something here that might sound strange coming from someone who's talking about financial anxiety. I'm grateful for the responsibility, genuinely. Having people who depend on you, having a reason to build something, a reason to show up, a reason that's bigger than yourself. That's not a burden in the way that word usually means. It's a weight, yes, but weight is also what gives you direction. Weight is what makes the work feel like it matters. The problem isn't the responsibility. The problem is the absence of a clear endpoint. When you're just working to pay the next month, and the month after that, and the month after that, indefinitely, with no horizon where the working becomes optional, that's when the weight stops feeling meaningful and starts feeling like a trap. And there's another layer to this that I don't hear discussed often. When you're the sole provider for a family with young children, the stakes of any financial disruption are very different from the stakes when you're responsible only for yourself. If I'm single and I have a bad month, a slow month, an unexpected cost, a client who doesn't pay on time, I adjust. I eat differently. I delay something. I'm uncomfortable for a while, but the discomfort is mine and I manage it. When there are 3 kids and a household depending on the same income, a bad month is not just personal discomfort. It's a 12-year-old who can't go on a school trip. It's a conversation you don't want to have with your wife. It's a bill that doesn't get paid when it should. It's a very specific kind of helplessness. the feeling of not being able to provide something that someone you love needs. That feeling is different, it's sharper, and it doesn't come from catastrophe. It comes from the completely ordinary reality of being the only load-bearing wall in a structure that 5 people live inside. One wall, all the weight. I think most people who feel permanently financially unsafe are experiencing exactly this. Not too little money, not necessarily, but no visible horizon where the money becomes enough, where the working becomes a choice rather than a requirement. And without that horizon, the feeling doesn't arrive, can't arrive, because the thing that produces the feeling isn't income, it's freedom. The freedom to choose. The freedom to say, I could stop and things would still be okay. Most people never have that freedom, and most people never stop to ask why. Here's something I've noticed, in my own life and in conversations I've had with people in similar situations. At a certain point, increasing income stops improving the feeling of financial safety. There's a threshold, different for everyone, below which more money genuinely helps. Below that threshold, financial stress is real and legitimate and directly tied to material conditions. You don't have enough to cover your actual needs. More money solves that. But above the threshold, once your needs are covered, once the bills are paid, once there's some margin, more income doesn't produce proportionally more security. It produces more consumption, more lifestyle, more obligations that rise to meet the income. And then you're back at the same feeling, just at a higher altitude. The anxiety is the same. The background hum is the same. The 2 a.m. calculations are the same, just with bigger numbers. The reason this happens isn't mysterious. When income increases, we expand. New income becomes new spending almost automatically. The slightly better apartment, the slightly better car, the slightly more expensive version of everything. Not dramatically, usually not dramatically, but incrementally, consistently, across years. And then the new level becomes the baseline. And the baseline feels just as precarious as the old one, because now you have more to lose and more obligations to maintain. Economists have a name for this. I'm not going to use it because this isn't an economics lecture. But the phenomenon is real, and the experience of it is real, and almost nobody warns you about it in advance. They just assume you'll figure it out, usually after you've already done it. I want to say something about the math of this, because there's a specific mechanism at work that I think is worth understanding. The feeling of financial safety isn't really about your income number. It's about the ratio between what you earn and what you need. If you earn a lot but need a lot, if your lifestyle has expanded to fill the income, the ratio isn't actually better than when you were earning less. You're just running the same distance at a higher speed. The ratio only improves when income grows faster than spending. When there's a gap, a real gap, not a theoretical one, between what comes in and what goes out. That gap is everything. That gap is where security actually lives. And the gap is exactly what lifestyle inflation destroys. So you earn more, spend more, feel the same, wonder why. And the answer is that you never let the gap open. You filled it immediately with the next level of spending. This is not a willpower failure, mostly. It's the natural result of having no clear reason not to spend, no specific thing you're building toward, no horizon that requires you to protect the gap. Which is why having a direction, a real one, matters more than having a higher income. There's a psychological layer underneath this too. The feeling of safety isn't just about numbers, it's about narrative. The story you tell yourself about where you are and where you're going. And one of the most damaging stories, common, normalized, almost invisible, is this one. I'll feel secure once I get to the next level, once I earn more, once the business grows, once the kids are older, once the mortgage is smaller. Once. This story is dangerous because it's always available. There's always a next level, always a future moment to attach the feeling to. And as long as the feeling lives in the future, it never has to arrive in the present. It's a very effective way to spend your entire working life, never feeling the thing you were working toward. I know this because I did it for years. I'm still catching myself doing it sometimes. The story is comfortable in its way. It gives you a reason to keep going, a sense that the work is building towards something. But if the something never arrives, if the horizon keeps moving, then the comfort is an illusion. And at some point, you have to be honest about that. About 2 years ago, I stumbled across a concept I'd heard mentioned before, but never taken seriously. FIRE. Financial independence, retire early. And my first reaction, if I'm honest, was dismissal. This sounds like something for tech workers in California with no kids and stock options. This is not for me. This is not for someone in my situation. I moved on, forgot about it. Then I came back to it. And this time I actually read past the name. And what I found was something different from what I'd assumed. Here's what FIRE actually is, very simply, without the jargon. The idea is that if you accumulate enough invested assets, money working for you in index funds, broadly speaking, you reach a point where the returns from those assets can cover your living expenses indefinitely. You no longer need active income to survive, which means work becomes a choice, not a requirement, a choice. You could keep working. Most people who reach this point do keep working in some form, because most people want to do something. But you work because you want to, not because you have to. And retire early, in this context, doesn't necessarily mean sitting on a beach at 35 doing nothing. It means at 40 or 45 or even 50, much earlier than the traditional model, you've built something that supports you whether you work or not. The traditional model says, work for 40 years, save a little, retire at 65 on a pension or government support, and hope the money lasts. FIRE says, what if you built real assets faster, spent more intentionally, and reached freedom decades earlier? The math behind it is actually simpler than people think. There's a concept called the 4% rule. The idea that if you have a portfolio invested in diversified index funds, you can withdraw roughly 4% of its value per year, and historically, the portfolio has sustained itself over decades. The investments grow faster than you're withdrawing, so if your family needs, say, $40,000 a year to live, and I'm using that as an example, not a recommendation, then the FIRE number would be around $1 million in invested assets. If you need $60,000 a year, you're looking at $1.5 million. These numbers sound large, and they are, but they're also specific. They're calculable. They're not a vague, someday I'll have enough. They're a target with a number attached, and having a specific target, even a distant one, is completely different from the treadmill I described earlier. The treadmill has no destination, the target does. Now, I'm not here to tell you FIRE is the answer for your specific situation. I don't know your situation, and I'm still building toward this myself. I'm nowhere near the finish line. What I'm saying is that encountering this concept changed how I thought about the question I'd been sitting with, the question of why the feeling of financial safety never arrived. And the answer it suggested was this: because you've been optimizing for income when you should have been optimizing for independence. Income is what you earn. Independence is what you keep and grow. Those aren't the same thing. You can have high income and low independence, high consumption, high obligations, high sensitivity to any disruption in the earning. Or you can have moderate income and, over time, with intention, build toward independence, toward a point where the income becomes optional. The first path is more comfortable in the short term. The second path is the one that actually produces the feeling. For me, specifically for me, with 3 kids, working from home, being the sole provider, the concept did something very specific. It gave me a horizon. Not a vague, someday things will be better horizon, a real one, a calculable one, a direction that has a logic and a mechanism. It didn't make the work easier overnight, but it changed the relationship to the work. Instead of running on a treadmill with no visible end, I started seeing the treadmill as a path with a destination. That shift, just the shift in how I understood what I was building, changed the feeling. Not completely, not permanently. The anxiety still comes, especially in hard months. But there's something underneath it now that wasn't there before. A direction. Let me come back to the external pressure, because understanding fire doesn't automatically solve the problem of living inside a culture that has different expectations. The family still has expectations. Extended family still asks questions. The ambient social pressure to look like you're at a certain level is still there. And this is the part I don't have a clean answer to. What I can tell you is what worked, what actually helped for me. The first thing was a very private decision to stop using other people's definitions of success as my benchmark. Not dramatically, not in a way that created conflict, just internally. I stopped asking, what does this look like to people around me? And started asking, does this move me closer to independence? Those two questions produce very different decisions. The status signal question says, get the nicer car, the bigger apartment, the visible marker that says you're doing well. The independence question says, does this expense slow down the building? Does this cost me runway? When you're consistently asking the second question, the spending changes. Not overnight, not perfectly, but directionally. The second thing was harder. It was accepting that the feeling of security I was looking for is not something that external circumstances will ever fully deliver. Not income, not assets, not reaching some magic number. There is no amount of money that completely removes the anxiety of being responsible for people you love. There's no asset level that makes a 3-year-old's health scare feel small, or a 12-year-old's future feel completely certain, or the weight of being the only financial support feel genuinely light. Those things are part of the role, part of the love. You don't eliminate them by getting richer. What you can do, the only thing that actually helps, is build something real underneath them. A foundation, a runway, a direction, not a performance of security, the actual thing. And that building is slow. Slower than most people want. Slower than the internet makes it look. But it's the only version that actually works. Here's where I am right now. I'm 38. I'm working on it. The fire number for my situation, what it would take for my family to be genuinely independent, is far enough away that I don't have the luxury of complacency. But it's close enough that I can see the logic, I can feel the direction. And that feels different from how it felt before I understood what I was building toward. The anxiety is still there, I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But there's something else there too now. Intention. And intention, I've found, is a better foundation than income. Most people never feel financially safe. I said that at the beginning, and I believe it. But I want to be careful about what conclusion I draw from it. The conclusion isn't, it's hopeless. The conclusion isn't, the system is broken and there's nothing you can do. The conclusion is simpler and I think more useful. The path most people are on is not designed to produce the feeling they're looking for. It's designed to produce consumption, productivity, participation in an economy that benefits from you spending what you earn. It is not designed to produce freedom. Freedom, real financial freedom, the kind that makes the feeling arrive, requires building something. Slowly, intentionally, against the current of a culture that would prefer you spend everything and stay productive. That's harder, but it's the actual path. I don't know where you are right now. Maybe you're early in your career and this feels abstract. Maybe you're in the middle of it, carrying a weight you haven't named yet. Maybe you're further along and recognizing something in what I said. Wherever you are, the feeling you're looking for is real, and it's not unreasonable to want it. It just won't arrive from where most people are looking for it. That's the thing I learned, slowly, later than I'd like. But I got there. Take care.